In this episode, we move from collecting and sharing intelligence into the more important question of what that intelligence actually does inside a real security program. Because threat intelligence only matters if it improves decisions, actions, and outcomes. New learners sometimes imagine threat intelligence as a separate specialty where analysts write reports that sit on a shelf or get read only by senior leaders. But that picture is far too narrow for the way modern defense really works. Threat intelligence powers security functions by helping teams understand what threats are most relevant, which behaviors deserve attention, what weaknesses should be treated as urgent, and how defensive work should be prioritized when time and staff are limited. It adds context to raw events and gives security teams a way to move from reacting blindly to responding with purpose. When you understand how intelligence supports daily operations, it becomes much easier to see why ISACs Plus treats it as an operational capability rather than a side topic. Strong defenders do not gather intelligence simply to know more. They use it to make the entire security program sharper, faster, and more aligned to the threats that actually matter. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful starting point is remembering that threat intelligence is not the same thing as raw data. Raw data may include logs, alerts, suspicious addresses, research notes, malware hashes, or reports from outside sources. But intelligence is what happens when that information is evaluated, organized, and connected to real security questions. The value comes from interpretation and relevance. A list of bad domains does not help much by itself if no one understands how those domains relate to current attacker behavior, whether they matter to the organization, or what teams should do with that information. Threat intelligence becomes powerful when it helps security functions answer practical questions such as what activity is most likely to target the business, which techniques are being used in the wild, how a known actor typically behaves after gaining access, and what parts of the environment are most exposed to current patterns of attack. In other words, intelligence helps transform security operations from a general defensive posture into a more informed and targeted one, where limited resources are aimed at the threats most likely to create real harm. One of the most direct ways threat intelligence powers security work is by improving alert triage inside the Security Operations Center, SOC. A beginner often sees alerts as isolated events, but defenders know that alerts become much more meaningful when they are placed in context. If an alert involves an address, domain, file pattern, or behavior already associated with recent malicious activity, the analyst can understand more quickly whether the event deserves immediate escalation or lower priority review. Intelligence helps separate routine noise from signs that match real campaigns, actor behavior, or infrastructure tied to active threats. That matters because security teams often deal with far more signals than they can examine equally. The SOC therefore depends on context to decide where attention goes first. Threat intelligence provides that context by linking internal events to outside knowledge, recent trends, and known attacker methods. Instead of asking only whether an alert fired, analysts can ask whether it fits something defenders already know to be dangerous, relevant, and active in environments like their own. Threat intelligence also strengthens detection engineering by helping teams design better rules, tune existing alerts, and focus on behaviors that reflect meaningful risk. Without intelligence, detection can become generic and overly broad, which often creates too much noise while still missing important patterns. Intelligence gives defenders a clearer sense of what to look for by revealing the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, that real attackers are using against specific industries, technologies, or exposed services. That insight helps teams create detections tied to behavior rather than relying only on simple signatures or outdated assumptions. A detection engineer may use intelligence to recognize that attackers targeting cloud identities now favor a particular sequence of actions, or that a criminal campaign often follows phishing with a specific kind of remote access behavior. Those patterns help shape what is monitored and how alerts are tuned. The result is not perfect detection, but more relevant detection. Intelligence helps move defensive monitoring away from abstract possibility and closer to the patterns of activity that are currently being observed in the broader threat landscape. Threat hunting is another function that becomes much more effective when driven by intelligence. Hunting is not just random searching through data in the hope of stumbling across something suspicious. Good hunting begins with a reasoned hypothesis about what might be happening and what evidence would likely appear if that activity were present. Threat intelligence gives hunters the material they need to build those hypotheses. A recent report may describe how a threat actor gains access, what systems they tend to move toward, what credentials they seek, or what subtle traces they leave behind when they try to remain hidden. That information helps hunters search with purpose. Instead of looking for anything unusual, they look for the kinds of anomalies that align with known attacker behavior. This makes the hunt more efficient and more defensible. If the hunt finds nothing, the team still learns something useful about current exposure. If it finds a partial match, intelligence provides the wider context needed to understand whether the finding is harmless, suspicious, or potentially part of a larger intrusion pattern. Threat intelligence also plays a major role in incident response, IR, where speed and clarity matter enormously. When a team is investigating a confirmed or suspected incident, intelligence can help them understand what they may be dealing with before the full scope is obvious. If a ransomware group tends to steal data before encryption, intelligence can encourage responders to look early for signs of data staging and outbound transfer rather than focusing only on visible disruption. If a known actor often uses legitimate administrative tools after access, responders know to review normal-looking commands and account activity more carefully. Intelligence can also inform containment decisions by highlighting what infrastructure is likely related, what forms of persistence may be used, and how attackers in similar cases have moved laterally. This does not mean intelligence solves the incident by itself. Local evidence still comes first, but IR is stronger when responders are not working in the dark. Intelligence shortens the time between first confirmation and informed action by giving the team a frame of reference for what behaviors, risks, and next steps are most likely. Another major security function powered by threat intelligence is vulnerability management, especially when organizations must decide what to fix first. Most environments contain more vulnerabilities than a team can remediate immediately, so simple severity scores are often not enough to guide action well. Threat intelligence improves prioritization by showing which weaknesses are being actively exploited, which ones matter to specific sectors, and which exposures align with attacker interest right now. A flaw may look serious on paper, but if intelligence shows no active exploitation and no realistic path to impact in the local environment, it may not deserve the same urgency as another issue with a lower score, but clear evidence of real-world abuse. This matters because time and staffing are limited. Intelligence helps the vulnerability team move from a purely technical ranking system to a more realistic risk-based one. When intelligence is integrated well, patching and mitigation decisions become more closely tied to what attackers are actually doing, which makes the remediation process more strategic and more useful to the organization. Threat intelligence also supports leadership and risk functions by helping non-technical decision-makers understand the threat environment in business terms. Executives and risk owners do not need endless technical detail, but they do need clarity about what kinds of attacks are most relevant, what trends are emerging, and how those trends affect organizational priorities. Intelligence can help explain why a specific business unit needs stronger protections, why a third-party dependency deserves additional review, or why a major change in attacker behavior justifies spending time and money on certain defenses. This connection between security detail and business decision-making is one of the reasons intelligence matters far beyond the analyst desk. It supports more informed conversations about risk, investment, preparedness, and resilience. When leadership understands that a rise in credential theft campaigns affects remote access security, or that new targeting of a sector increases business exposure, they are more likely to support timely and appropriate actions. Intelligence, therefore, helps bridge the gap between technical observation and organizational decision-making in a way that makes the whole security program more aligned. User protection and awareness efforts also improve when threat intelligence is applied thoughtfully. Many awareness programs fail because they stay too generic and never reflect the kinds of tactics that people inside the organization are actually likely to encounter. Intelligence can show what themes attackers are using in phishing campaigns, which departments are more likely to be targeted, and what kinds of pretexts are currently common in the organization's sector. That allows awareness messaging to become more relevant and more believable. If current intelligence shows attackers are abusing vendor invoices, password reset notices, or executive impersonation in a particular industry, training and user communications can be adjusted to match those realities. This helps users become more alert to the patterns they are most likely to see instead of being buried under broad warnings that feel disconnected from daily work. Intelligence can also inform protective measures around identity, email, and access. When defenders know what social engineering approaches are active, they can better shape review processes, escalation guidance, and user-facing warnings that reduce the chance of preventable compromise. Threat intelligence further powers security architecture and defensive planning by helping organizations make better choices about what controls and visibility matter most. A team designing network monitoring, endpoint protection, identity safeguards, or cloud logging can benefit greatly from understanding how attackers commonly operate in similar environments. Intelligence may reveal that certain assets attract repeated targeting, that specific attacker behaviors go unnoticed in many breaches, or that some defensive gaps are being exploited across the sector. This helps architects and engineers prioritize where to strengthen monitoring, segmentation, access control, and recovery capabilities. Intelligence does not replace sound design principles, but it helps refine them in light of real adversary behavior. Rather than building only for theoretical threats, teams can build with a clearer view of the practical threats already affecting comparable organizations. This makes planning more grounded. It also helps organizations avoid spending too much energy on highly unlikely scenarios while missing the quieter, more common attack paths that intelligence shows are creating harm every week. Automation and workflow efficiency are also improved when intelligence is integrated into security operations. A good example is enrichment, where an alert is automatically supplemented with useful context from current intelligence, so an analyst does not have to collect that background manually each time. If a suspicious connection involves infrastructure already tied to malicious activity, or if a file pattern matches a known campaign, that information can be attached to the case early. This is especially valuable when supported by security information and event management, SIEM, systems and security orchestration, automation, and response, SOAR, workflows, because those platforms can use intelligence to speed case handling, improve prioritization, and reduce repetitive work. The benefit is not just convenience. Automation helps analysts focus their time on judgment and investigation rather than on constant manual lookups. Still, the human role remains essential. Intelligence-driven automation works best when it supports careful review instead of making irreversible decisions blindly. Used well, it helps teams respond with greater speed and consistency while keeping human analysts in control of the most important decisions. For intelligence to power security functions effectively, it has to be relevant to the organization's actual environment. One of the biggest mistakes teams make is treating all threat intelligence as equally useful, when in reality much of it may have little connection to the systems, users, or business model they are trying to protect. Intelligence becomes operationally valuable when it is filtered through internal context. A campaign targeting industrial control environments may matter greatly to one organization and hardly at all to another. A credential theft pattern abusing a widely used cloud platform may deserve immediate attention if that platform is central to daily operations. This is why integration with asset knowledge, business understanding, and local telemetry matters so much. Intelligence alone does not create value. Value appears when teams can connect outside reporting to internal exposure. The strongest security programs do not collect intelligence simply because it exists. They select, interpret, and apply it according to what assets they have, what threats they face, and what security decisions they need to make this week rather than in theory. There are also several common misconceptions that can weaken intelligence-driven security if they go unchallenged. One is the belief that threat intelligence is mainly a strategic reporting product for senior people and has little to do with daily operations. Another is the belief that intelligence is just a list of indicators of compromise, IOCs, when in reality behavioral patterns and TTPs often provide more lasting value than short-lived technical artifacts. Some teams also assume that more intelligence is always better, even when the extra material creates overload, distraction, or false urgency. Intelligence only powers security functions when it is curated, interpreted, and turned into action. If it is dumped into dashboards or ticket queues without thought, it becomes background noise like any other unmanaged feed. Good programs avoid this by asking simple but important questions. What decision should this intelligence improve? What team should use it? And what change in behavior or priority should result from it? If those questions do not have clear answers, then the intelligence has probably not been operationalized yet. What ties all of this together is that threat intelligence works best when it becomes part of the rhythm of security operations rather than standing apart from them. The SOC uses it to triage and investigate more intelligently. Detection teams use it to refine what gets monitored. Hunters use it to form better hypotheses. IR teams use it to move faster and look in the right places. Vulnerability teams use it to prioritize realistically. Leaders use it to understand risk in business terms. Awareness teams use it to make warnings more relevant, and engineers use it to shape stronger defenses. In each case, intelligence is not replacing skill or local evidence. It is amplifying them by giving the team a more informed view of what is happening outside the organization and how those patterns may affect internal operations. That is what it means for intelligence to power security functions. It gives many different teams better context, better timing, and better judgment. By the end of this discussion, the main lesson should be clear that threat intelligence is valuable not because it exists, but because it improves the way security functions operate from day to day. It helps teams prioritize what matters, investigate with more context, design stronger detections, hunt with purpose, respond with greater speed, and explain risk more clearly across the organization. When intelligence is relevant, timely, and integrated into actual workflows, it turns security from a reactive activity into a more informed and adaptive one. For a CISA Plus learner, that is the most important point to remember. Threat intelligence is not a detached research exercise, and it is not only for specialists writing reports. It is a practical force multiplier that helps many parts of the security program make smarter decisions under pressure. Once you see how intelligence supports so many different functions, you begin to understand why mature security operations depend on it so heavily.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.